Can you see that area behind me beneath the red tinted sky? That is what's left of Raccoon City.
Our platoon is cut off. No survivors left.
I'd rather starve to death in here than be eaten by one of those undead monsters!
We're both gonna die.
Wait, don't shoot!
Down!
Stars.
Unity breeds power. Power is life.
Biohazard.
July 31st, 1978. The first time I visited that place, it was the summer of my 18th year. That makes it about 20 years ago. As I got off the helicopter, I remembered the sight of the swirling wind the helicopter blades whipped into the air. When viewed from above, the old mansion seemed quite normal. But when seen from the ground, there was something foreboding and unapproachable about it. Birkin, my junior by 2 years, seemed as usual to be only concerned with the document he was holding. We were assigned to the mansion 2 days earlier, on the day that the executive training center we had belonged to was closed. It all seemed like it was planned, too much of a coincidence. But probably the only person who knew the real truth was Spencer. Spencer was one of the main guys in charge of America's T-virus research at the Arklay Research Facility. As soon as we got off the helicopter, the head of the facility was standing in front of the elevator, ready to greet us. I can't even remember the guy's name. Who really cares about formalities and figureheads like him? From that day on, the Arklay Research Center was ours. As chief researchers, we were put completely in charge of all aspects of the facility. Of course, that is just how Spencer had planned it all out. He chose us. We ignored the facility head and got on the elevator. I had already memorized the building layout the day before, and Birkin, although he has no bad intentions, never really pays much attention to other people. Most people probably get pretty irked from the first 5 seconds that they meet us. However, the facility head had no reaction at all. But then, I was a young buck, completely full of himself, so I didn't really pay the facility head any mind. But in the end, I was really only Spencer's puppet, and the facility head, whose boss was Spencer, at least actually knew what Spencer was up to and what he was thinking. The whole time we were riding in the elevator, Birkin never took his eye off the documents he was holding. The document that Birkin was scrutinizing so closely was a report about a new virus that has shown up in Africa. It was called Ebola. At this moment, there were many people all throughout the world who were studying the Ebola virus. However, I think there were 2 major reasons why they were studying it: to help people and to kill them. As you probably know, the death rate of someone affected by Ebola is 90%. In 10 days, it quickly destroys a person's organs. Even now, there are known ways to prevent it or cure it. It could, quite possibly, destroy a large part of the human race. Of course, even before this, due to the Biological Weapons Prohibition Pact, it was illegal for us to study the virus as a weapon. However, even if we weren't the ones to research it, there was no proof that someone else wouldn't be doing that same thing. And so it was considered legal for us to research it, just in case. There is a thin line in international law between what is acceptable and what is prohibited. And so, it became necessary to research how the virus study information would be used as a method of prevention, not as a weapon. There really is no difference in the way in which you research a virus as a cure from how you research it as a weapon. But since the two are very similar, it is possible to pretend you are researching a cure, while in fact, be researching the virus as a weapon. Even though at that time, for whatever reason, Birkin may have been looking at the Ebola report, he wasn't really researching the Ebola virus. The Ebola virus had too many weak spots. First of all, the virus could only survive for a few days, if not inside a human body. It would soon die if under sunlight, ultraviolet light, for too long. Secondly, since it kills the host too quickly, there isn't enough time to transfer, infect other hosts. Finally, the virus is only transferable through direct touch, and so it can be easily prevented. Try to imagine the following. If a person who was heavily infected, the disease had spread all throughout their body, could actually stand and walk around, and without knowing it, was in direct contact with other people of their own accord. What if the RNA of the Ebola virus could actually alter a person's genetic code? And if, through that, a person was able to carry the virus without dying? What if this person had the resilience of a monster? That is, wouldn't this person be a living dead whose body carried the virus? Something that could infect others, sort of like a living biological weapon. I guess we are lucky that the Ebola virus doesn't have the potential to do such things. I wonder if we will be successful in holding out to such a virus without it getting into the wrong person's hands. The Arklay lab, headed up by Spencer, was built for that purpose, it seemed. To create a disease capable of the characteristics I listed before. Officially, it was just a pharmaceutical company researching cures to viruses. But the truth is, it was really a factory for manufacturing biological weapons. The origin of the company was to create new starter viruses by recombining genes. In order to produce biological weapons out of these new starter viruses, they began studying virus mutations in order to strengthen the basic viruses they had created. This was known as the T-virus experiment. RNA-based starter viruses can easily be mutated. Through those mutations, it is possible to strengthen their traits. The reason Birkin was so interested in the Ebola virus was that he was thinking of recombining the Ebola genes into a starter virus to strengthen its attributes. By the time we had arrived at the research center, there was already a sample of the Ebola virus waiting for us. We changed elevators several times, finally reached the upper level of the complex. When we arrived, even Birkin looked up. It was the first time we had met her. We hadn't heard a single word about her before. She was a secret of the utmost confidentiality at the research center, and they didn't let any information about her out of the compound. According to the records, she was at the research center from the very moment it was first built. She was 25. But we didn't know her name, nor why she was here. She was to be used as the experimental subject host for the T-virus. The day we began the experiment was November 10th, 1967. We did T-virus experiments on her for all of 11 years. Birkin mumbled something. Maybe they were words cursing our situation. Maybe they were words of praise. In any case, we had come to the point of no return now. We had two choices: to succeed in our research, or to lay here rotting like she was. Of course, that meant we really only had one choice. She was bound to a pipe bed, and something about her made me think, had this been a part of Spencer's plan all along? July 27th, 1981. Today, a 10-year-old girl was sent here as a chief researcher from Umbrella's Antarctica research facility. Her name was Alexia Ashford. I was 21. Birkin was 19. As annoying as it was, the whole Arklay complex was rampant with rumors of Antarctica Alexia. Nobody talked about anything else. She had been at Umbrella for a long time. The older guys at Umbrella knew the legendary Ashford name. Before we ever reached a dead end in our research, one of the old-timers would say, if only Professor Edward was still alive. If I remember correctly, Edward Ashford was one of the people who first discovered the starter virus and who originally planned creating the T-virus. However, he died soon after Umbrella was founded. It's been 13 years since his death, so is there really anything to gain by having high expectations of the Ashford lineage? And in fact, the Antarctic Research Center founded by his son hadn't yielded a single result. Don't people know the limits of Alexia's smarts? She is only Edward's grandchild, after all. But from the day she came, our worthless, good-for-nothing subordinates began to say, it's a good thing Alexia is here. She may be from a famous family, carry great genes within her, but nonetheless, I knew it was going to be a real hassle having subordinates with such a lack of good judgment. It's idiots like that who, if they accidentally stuck their foot in a bucket, wouldn't be able to move or figure out what to do unless someone told them. At least I could still tell the difference. However, if at that time I would have gotten upset about the whole thing, it would have just slowed down our progress on the T-virus research. Unless you can keep your cool and still be decisive no matter what the circumstances, then success will always evade you. At that time I was thinking this: by making good use of the past, then we could definitely yield good results. And if some of those old-timers, who feasibly could die at any second, then they would make great test subjects. After all, do you think it is possible to stand above the people if you can't rationally use their human resources well? However, the problem was Birkin. The way he reacted to the Alexia rumor was terrible. He never really said it, but for Birkin, the fact that he was the youngest person to ever be a chief researcher was always something he was proud of. That pride was severely injured by having a mere 10-year-old become a chief researcher. It was probably the first time someone so talented as he had ever tasted defeat. He just couldn't accept the younger girl of good lineage to be made a fool of by someone who hadn't gotten any results. Someone who had worked so far away. The fact that he couldn't get over it showed his immaturity. However, even though he was still immature, no matter what, I had to bring him back to his senses. It was during these 3 years that our research moved up to the second level. It was at this point that we fixed upon the idea of making a living biological weapon. We started to call the T-virus by a new name: zombie. However, it was impossible to get a 100% infection ratio. Within people, there is a subtle difference that the virus couldn't totally overtake. It seems compatibility was also a major factor. About 10% of the people who were injected with the zombie virus didn't get infected. And this was something that, no matter how hard we researched, we just couldn't overcome. A disease that would affect 90% of all humans seemed to me to be quite an effective weapon. But Spencer didn't see it that way. Spencer said he was hoping for a specialty virus that could easily wipe out everyone. But why in the world would he want something like that? One important characteristic of biological weapons was that they could be developed cheaply. However, the biological weapon that we were researching started to become very costly. If Spencer was in it just for the money, then he probably wouldn't have chosen to spend the extra money on researching a specialty virus that infected and wiped out 100% of its victims. It just wasn't financially worth it. Why would he want to ignore all financial concerns just to continue the research? If by changing the idea of war through biological warfare, he was attempting to monopolize all military industries, then I would have understood that. But even to this day, I have no idea what his true intentions were. But whatever Spencer's real reason was, Birkin was planning on making a biological weapon that would increase a country's military capacity. Not to just manipulate the genes of the T-virus, but also by adding other genetic code. He was planning on creating him. A military biological weapon that could annihilate those who went unaffected by the virus, as well as people who were wearing antiviral gear and equipment. This weapon was later named Hunter. However, that experience was temporarily put on hold in order to protect the test subjects from Birkin. Birkin's pace was quickened by Alexia's existence. He began to act out of the ordinary. He would stay at the lab for 24 hours straight, attempt experiments that he hadn't really thought out. I tried to use other researchers to get as many samples from the subjects before they died, but I just couldn't keep up with his pace. The head facilitator brought in a new subject as if nothing had ever happened, but she too soon died. It was hell. And within that hell, there was but one person living. The female test subject's body that continued to live on. She was already 28 years old, having lived 14 of the years in this research facility. Someone whose consciousness had been taken away by the starter virus that had been injected into her 14 years ago. Someone who, if their heart did happen to actually be alive, would only hope for death, but she continued to survive. Why was only she able to survive this long? Her basic experiment data and that of other test subjects seemed to be the same. It would still take a long time for us to solve this riddle. December 31st, 1983. The winter of my 6th year at the Arclay Research Center. For the past 2 years, there were no significant results, and time seemed to just stagnantly flow along. But before long, we had a breakthrough. The thing that started it all was a report we got that morning. Antarctica Alexia had died. The cause of her death was that she accidentally got infected by a virus that she herself was researching. It was called the T. Veronica virus. Alexia was 12 years old. It seemed she was just a little too young to be undertaking such dangerous experiments. There were many rumors to be heard. One particular rumor actually suggested that she injected the T. Veronica into her own body. No matter what the circumstances, I find that particular theory to be implausible. Probably, she was just so shaken up over her father's disappearance 1 year earlier that she just made a mistake in the experiment. After that, Alexia's last remaining blood relative, her twin brother, who had worked in the Antarctica Research Center, came and picked up her work where she left off, but no one had any expectations of him. In the end, the Ashford family was basically dead, without even yielding a single advance for the experiment. It was just as I thought. A legend is, after all, merely that, a legend. After the news of Alexia's death, Birkin changed. Or I guess I should say, he returned back to his normal self. But I guess the biggest thing was that all of his subordinates now had no choice but to think of him as the main researcher, since now there was no one who could surpass his talents. However, with that, it became taboo for anyone to talk about Alexia in front of him. He fiercely opposed me when I planned on getting a sample of the T. Veronica virus. I had no choice to put finding the truth about Alexia's research on the back burner. In the end, even though the situation was at its best, Birkin himself failed to grow up and advance his research. However, at that time, I was concerned more about a different question at hand. The Arklay Research Center was surrounded by a dense forest. I often hiked through the forest, but since the center was located in a mountain region, there was never anyone to be found nearby. The only method of transportation was by helicopter, and the center wasn't exactly the type of place that people came to visit. One important reason for the fact that the center was located in such an isolated location was to prevent the virus from getting out in the instance of a leak. However, biological weapons aren't that simple. Viruses don't only infect humans, they can infect other things as well. Any virus is usually capable of infecting more than one host. For example, the number of species that the ordinary influenza virus, the common flu, is recognized as infecting are birds, pigs, horses, seals, and humans. The difficult part is not that all types of animals, people within a species are affected. Even though within the bird species, ducks and chickens are affected, all other birds are not. And if a virus mutates, then the kinds and number of hosts it affects changes. So, it is impossible to create a virus that is capable of affecting everything. And that was the main problem, trying to adapt the T-virus so that it would affect everything that it came in contact with. After Birkin became useless, I started investigating the T-virus's communicative infection rate. It was then that I found out it was a fact that the T-virus could infect almost any kind of living thing. Not just animals, but plants, insects, fish, almost any species. The virus had the power to expand and disperse all over the earth. Whenever I would leave the center for a walk in the woods, I would always think to myself, why did Spencer choose this place? Because there were lots of different types of species concentrated in the woods. If the virus ever did get out here, then what would happen to a place where there were this many type of living things present? In the case of insects, they are small, so you might not think of them as dangerous, even if they are secondary carriers of the virus. However, insects usually exist in swarms, and that huge number makes them a very dangerous carrier indeed. If they were carriers, then how far would the virus spread? If a plant was a carrier then, since they can't move, you wouldn't expect them to be able to infect many people. However, what about the pollen that comes from plants? Considering those factors, the center was an extremely dangerous place to run virus research. And if you really think about it, the location of the Ashford's Antarctica Research Center was really a much safer and obvious choice. It would almost seem as if this place was specifically chosen as a location for the purpose of spreading the virus. But I just can't imagine that would really be so. What is Spencer trying to get us to do? This was a major issue, so big that I couldn't tell the other researchers. At this time, the only person that I felt I could have talked with about this was Birkin, but it was evident that telling him would be meaningless. I needed more information. It was at that time that I first began to feel the limitations of my position as researcher. I needed to get myself a position that had more access to information that would reveal Spencer's true objective. I felt no love lost for throwing away my position as a researcher in order to find out. But I couldn't rush things, because if Spencer ever got wind of what I was doing, then it would be all over. I jumped back into my research, and it was business as usual, so as not to call attention to my plans. During those times, the female test subject that continued to survive was left in some corner and forgotten. A living could have been. We began to call her that, sometime after she stopped yielding useful data for us. At least, until 5 years later, that is. July 1st, 1988. The summer of our 11th year at Arklay was just starting. I was already 28. Birkin had become a father and already had a 2-year-old daughter. His wife was one of the researchers that worked at Arklay. You would normally think it hard to understand someone wanting to get married and raise a child, all the while doing the research. But it is said that only non-ordinary people ever continue to do research at Arklay. Only the crazy ones ever succeeded here. And so, after 10 long years, our research finally reached the 3rd stage. To create a living biological weapon that was a soldier, that would follow strict orders, obey its program, and have intelligence. It was the so-called tyrant, basically a monster that we sent out to create. However, there was a major obstruction to our research back then. Finding a basic body for Tyrant. The biggest problem was that suitable bodies for Tyrant were, at that time, genetically very limited. The source of the problem lay in the nature of the T-virus. The T-virus mutation used to create zombies and hunters could be used on just about any human, but it would also cause a decline in the subject's brain capacity. If the subject didn't have a certain amount of intelligence, then it couldn't function as a tyrant. Birkin tried solving the problem by picking out new mutagens that would keep down the wear and tear on the subject's brain, so long as the subject fit the tyrant profile. However, the number of people that had suitable genetics to accept the tyrant cells were very limited. In a genetic analysis simulation, it was found that only 1 in 1 million had the genetic makeup to become a tyrant. Any other person would merely become a regular zombie. If we could have continued with our research, then I'm sure we could have found a way to make a different type of T-virus that could change more people into tyrants. However, in order to do that research, we first needed people that were perfectly suitable for the new mutation. The odds of us being able to bring one of those few people living in America that fit the profile was extremely low. In the end, the only thing they were able to do was to, by force, bring a few close contenders in from other labs. Even before we had the chance to start our research, it seemed we had already hit an obstacle. At that time, I heard a rumor about another location in Europe, where they had already reached the 3rd level of producing a living biological weapon, using a method that no one had thought of. It was known as the Nemesis Plan. In order to change the stagnant working pace and conditions, I took it upon myself to get a sample of one of the subjects from that plan. Of course, Birkin first disagreed with me, but in the end, I was able to get him to reconsider. Everyone had no choice but to recognize the fact that, until we found a suitable tyrant subject, our research wasn't going anywhere. The package from Europe came at midnight, several days later, after a series of broadcasts, proposals, and counter-proposals. That box that contained it landed on the helicopter pad. It read, Nemesis Prototype. I had to use some very strong tactics to get the incomplete thing where it was being researched in France, but all the while, Spencer was backing me up, pulling all of his strings and using his influence. Only Birkin showed no interest in it until the end, but he at least recognized it as an important part of the experiment. The sample was developed to create a never-before-seen, totally new form. By manipulating genes, they had artificially created a living parasite. That was what Nemesis really was. It could latch onto another organism's brain, and then take control of the host's brain, bringing it a high level of destructive power. By combining intelligence with a destructive body suitable for battle, they were able to form the ultimate biological weapon. And if they could complete the project, then they would be capable of creating warlike bodies without having to worry about the intelligence issue. However, the problem was that the parasite containing it was not stable. The only thing written within the document that was attached to the sample was, failure, sample died, over and over again. Anything that had been affected and whose intelligence was being controlled would die within 5 minutes. We all understood that messing around with the incomplete prototype was very dangerous. If we could only somehow manage to extend the amount of time that the hosts would live, then we could take control over the project. That was what I was aiming for. Of course, we would use her as our test subject. Surely her unusually high endurance would be perfect for sustaining the Nemesis prototype parasite for a long time. Even if she didn't last that long, it's not as if we would be losing anything special anyways. However, the experiment yielded a result that was opposite from what I was predicting. The Nemesis parasite that tried to enter her brain disappeared. At first, I didn't even know what was going on. I couldn't believe that she would be the one to mix with the parasite genes without dying. That was the beginning. Somewhere within that undying body of hers, there had been a change. We had to re-examine her from head to toe one more time. During our 10 years of research, she had been totally and thoroughly examined, but this time, we ignored that previous data. For the 21 years that she had been here, for the first time, something was finally happening. After she had already survived longer than other subjects who had received the Nemesis virus, it was only Birkin that started to realize what was happening. There was something within her. That something was a deviation from the T-virus plan. Something new that gave way to a new form. Something that changed our destiny. It was the beginning of the G-virus plan. July 31st, 1995. It had been 17 years since I'd been back there. When I come, I remember the wind. The scenery and buildings from the surrounding area hadn't changed a bit. I saw Birkin standing on the helipad. He arrived before I did. Meeting with him somehow already seemed nostalgic. It had been 4 years since I had left the Arclay Research Center. 4 years ago, when Birkin's proposed G-virus plan was approved, I put a transfer request for the data information section, and my request was immediately approved. The fact that I had given up on being a researcher and needed a change probably seemed like a natural change that most people go through. Actually, the truth of the matter was that G had already reached a level that was beyond my ability. And even if I wasn't really here to discover Spencer's true intentions, I think that at that time, I would have definitely realized the limitations of my ability. As the wind danced around the helicopter, Birkin was, as usual, fixated on some document. Apparently, he was coming to Arklay on a routine basis, but he was no longer assigned there. A while ago, he had been transferred to a huge underground research facility in Raccoon City. That was the main facility for his G-virus research. But, to tell the truth, 4 years ago, I really didn't think that Spencer would approve G, because it deviated from the idea of weapon, and it was created with too many unknowns left unsolved. The big difference between G and the T-virus was that a body infected with G would spontaneously continue to mutate. Of course, a virus's genes are unprotected, so it quickly mutates. But the cells within a living organism are different. Even if the subject's makeup has been altered by the virus, the cells within the organism's body rarely can be mutated. Of course, by using outer stimuli, such as radiation, you can make mutations occur within a living body. However, a body that is infected with G continues to mutate without any outer stimuli until the host dies. Even that T-virus has lots of attributes that are quite similar to G. It has already been observed that the genetic makeup of one of the living biological weapons, a person infected with the T-virus, who has been placed in a special setting, has continuously changed. But in order for this change to occur, it is necessary to use outer stimuli as a catalyst, and one can mildly predict which changes are likely to occur. However, there are no such laws concerning a body infected with G. No one can predict just how someone infected with G will change. No matter what kind of method you use to try to cope with G, it continually changes, making that method ineffective. 7 years ago, Birkin noticed a little bit of this effect in the female test subject. There wasn't the slightest change in her appearance, but deep within her, something was constantly changing, and she continued to coexist with the virus used in the experiments. And so, after 21 years of inner mutations, even the parasite nemesis just became one more mutation within her body. The G-virus plan was a plan to push those characteristics to the utmost limit. However, the thing that lay ahead could be an evolution to the final form for mankind. Or it could be a finale in which the organism merely dies. Could we really call that a weapon? What was Spencer thinking when he approved this plan? Even though I had been working in the information section for these 4 long years, I'd still been unable to figure out what Spencer was planning. And now, Spencer has stopped coming to Arklay. Spencer has stopped coming to Arklay, almost as if something that he has been eagerly awaiting and expecting has begun. Spencer, like some mirage floating in the desert, had begun to grow farther and farther away from me. But I was sure that a chance would present itself to me eventually. That was, of course, if I lived long enough to see that day. Birkin and I got on the elevator and rode to the top floor, to the place where we had first met her. A man named John, Birkin's successor and new chief researcher, was waiting there for us. He came from a research center in Chicago and was supposedly a very talented scientist, but he was a little too straight to be working at a place like this. He began to question the inhumanity of what was going on in the labs and made his opinions known to the upper-level executives. I had heard rumors about him at the information section. Everyone seemed to agree that if any information ever leaked out, he probably would have been the culprit. We ignored John and kept on walking, and then began the final disposal procedures on her. You must kill her. Due to her being infected with Nemesis, although only a minor amount, she started to think and become conscious. She started to act in grotesque ways. Her behavior has continued to escalate, and now she wears the face of another woman that she peeled off just like a mask. According to reports, she acted in the same way after they gave her the first starter virus. I don't know why she began to act in such a way, but because she recently killed 3 researchers, they have decided to dispose of her. Now that the G research is on the right track, there is no real use for a test subject like her. After constantly checking and reconfirming for 3 days the fact that she was dead, her corpse was, as per facility head's order, taken away somewhere. In the end, I never did find out who she was and why she was brought here. Of course, she was merely a test subject. But still, though, if she hadn't been here then, there wouldn't have been any G plan, and Birkin and I would probably be leading different lives now. I left the Arclay Research Center, thinking that very thing. I wonder how much of this was according to Spencer's plan. The truth behind the rise and fall of Umbrella is something to which only a select few are privy. The beginning of the end started on the outskirts of Raccoon City in the Arclay Mountains.
In time, I shifted my position to STARS, a special forces unit of the Raccoon Police Department. Umbrella, for crisis management reasons of their illegal bioorganic weapons development, had many of its people working in the police department. I became the leader of STARS and conducted all sorts of intelligence activities for Umbrella. As I continued to serve, I devised my own plans and waited for the right moment to execute them. Then at last, opportunity knocked.
Stormy night when the leeches overwhelmed the Ecliptic Express. The Special Forces unit sent to investigate the area reported an emergency, but the announcement was suddenly cut off and followed only by silence. Enter the STARS unit member, Rebecca Chambers. Umbrella has been at the center of my plans for a long time, but the train incident would prove to be the beginning of the end.
10 years ago, Spencer had me assassinated and stole all of my research. However, something wondrous happened. The T-virus fused with the leeches and brought me back from the darkness of death. Now, I will have my revenge on Umbrella.
The plans to reuse the management training facility were scrapped by Marcus's unfortunate outburst. Not only that, but the incident appeared to spread the virus to the area surrounding the mansion, causing a biohazard outbreak. It is time to abandon the sinking ship that is Umbrella. The pair overcame impossible odds and made it out alive. Lucky, I suppose. Since the event, Billy Cohen has gone missing, while Rebecca is about to enter a new nightmare as she heads for the mansion. Stewards left behind, I regrouped with the STARS Alpha team. There was no time for delays. Umbrella's command structure was in motion, and the real struggle was about to begin.
After splitting up with Billy, I went to the mansion where Bravo team was to rendezvous. When I arrived, I found that none of the others were there, and the mansion was unsettlingly quiet. I was exhausted from the events of the previous day, and before I knew it, I had drifted into a nightmare.
The freak murder incident that occurred in a forest near the mansion started it all. The mansion was Umbrella's secret bow laboratory, and it was clear that the in-development T-virus was the cause of the murder. Initially, Umbrella instructed me secretively to keep STARS out of the case. But, with the heightened emotions of the citizens, STARS had no choice but to move in.
The mansion incident. That was the night I led the STARS Alpha team into the Arklay Mountains, and we touched down in the surrounding woods. We were to look into the disappearance of Bravo team. At least, that was the bait. The reality was quite a different story for the unsuspecting members of the Alpha team. After being attacked by a pack of monsters, only Chris and a few others, including myself, made it to the mansion. Everything was going according to plan. Soon, I would have the research data that I needed.
I hated how hopeless I felt, seeing Richard lying there, wounded. I had to be stronger. I had to fight, and I had to survive. No matter what happened, I'll prove I have what it takes to survive.
It was time to begin executing my plans. In the midst of the whole affair, I could take Umbrella's ultimate bioorganic weapon, the Tyrant, and join forces with an opposing corporation of Umbrella. To buy into that opposing corporation, I would need the actual combat data of the Tyrant. Barry was the strong truth and justice kind, and cherished his family more than anything. His type is easy to manipulate. I simply took that most important thing away from him. I had to eliminate Enrico, who found out what was behind it all. I used Barry to get to him. After I successfully got rid of that nuisance, I awaited the sample specimen that Barry would bring to me in the Tyrant's room. I injected the virus I obtained from Birkin in advance. If I made Umbrella believe I was dead, it made it far more convenient to sell myself to the opposing corporation. According to Birkin, the virus had profound effects. It would put my body in a state of temporary death. It would then bring me back to life with superhuman powers. Therefore, I unleashed an awesome tyrant from its slumber and let it attack me. As my consciousness faded away, I was certain that the whole scheme would end in success.
I died once. I will never forget the cold, dark fingers of death reaching out for me. However, even that death was a necessary component of the big picture. The virus that Birkin had created brought me back from the brink of annihilation. When I awoke, hatred became my master. I found the tyrant that killed me was dead, and the facility was just moments away from self-destruction. I did not have time to enjoy my newfound life. I had something I needed to do. Time to grab the data and get out. Nobody's perfect. Not even you, Lisa. The end has come. Be a good girl and stay dead this time.
Never did I imagine that STARS could slay the evil creation. I lost the tyrant, and the plan I devised, which cost me my humanity, ended in failure. Now, anyone or anything that stood in my way would be terminated. It has been that way for a long time, and it always will be. At all costs, I had to make STARS pay.
It was near daybreak on July 25th when the incident at the mansion drew to a close. Except for Chris and a few others, the RPD stars were wiped out. All of the evidence of the event had vanished with the destruction of the mansion. For a brief moment, I felt the pain of coming death. However, this too was part of the plan. Nobody was aware of it, but I had been reborn. I cast off my frail humanity and became something greater. And so I was reborn like a phoenix emerging from the flame. I no longer needed Umbrella. A new horizon stretched out before me. I had risen beyond the human race and cheated death itself, leaving nothing to oppose me. The outbreak occurred in the summer of 1998. It started in the American Midwestern town of Raccoon City and brought hell to Earth. The T-virus was developed as a biological weapon. Proliferating amongst the unsuspecting public, it metamorphosed them into living death zombies. Umbrella's mission statement had always been preserving the health of the people, but beneath this bright statement lurked the shadow of Oswald E. Spencer's ambition.
2 months had passed since the mansion incident. To regain everything that I had lost in my new organization, I joined hands with Ada Wong, a female agent who was also sent to spy on Umbrella.
My mission is to take down Umbrella's entire operation. We're here for the G-virus.
I knew in my bones that the key developer was William Birkin. But what he didn't know was that Umbrella did not play games with anyone. Eventually, Birkin would be assassinated, and the G-virus would be in the hands of Umbrella. But the salvage team led by Hunk was ahead of us. By the time they got to Birkin, he had already injected himself with the G-virus. He became his own creation and decimated them.
But the virus was flawed. Even if you survive the seroconversion with G, you become nothing more than a puppet to its will. Our research was a failure. His only concern now is to procreate. People with a genetic makeup similar to his own could stand to birth a superior offspring.
Soon after, the T-virus carried by rats spread throughout Raccoon City, and Umbrella faced its worst scenario. The good citizens became zombies, and the city had headed for its devastating fate. Humans were no match against zombies.
Raccoon City was a town under the thumb of Umbrella. The virus washed over the city like a tidal wave, and in its wake left a living hell filled with ungodly creatures. Umbrella, under the guise of helping the hapless citizen, sent in their private military, the UBCS security force. Jill Valentine, a member of STARS, finds herself still trapped in the nightmare she thought she left behind with the mansion incident.
In the chaos, Umbrella Europe applied a new type bow called Nemesis. The Nemesis would hunt down and destroy the surviving member of STARS, Jill. It became imperative that our organization also obtain the Nemesis data.
My fight against bio-warfare all started in a zombie-infested ghost town. It was September 1998.
By the way, go straight to your underground lab.
Lab? What's going on here?
Sorry. That information's classified.
Seems to be evolving much faster than expected.
Identify yourself.
Stop! You'll never get the G-Virus!
To cover up the whole affair, Umbrella jettisoned a tyrant to take care of Leon and Claire, who were trying to unveil their secrets. Then, a new revelation. Birkin used to hide the findings of his studies in his daughter Sherry's pendant. It was very possible that the G-Virus was there. While Umbrella was busy with their cover-up, I sent Ada undercover to seek the location of Sherry. I, the dead man, on the other hand, had to work in the shadows.
After reuniting with Sherry, we managed to escape from the underground sewer, only to be faced with a new problem. Sherry became sick. She told us that while she'd been wandering the depths of the sewers, she had been implanted with a G embryo. But it wasn't too late. We began our journey into the bowels of the Umbrella facility to retrieve the vaccine.
A spy's obligation and priority is in the mission, to carry out the mission like a machine without any emotional interference. But through her interaction and involvement with Leon S. Kennedy, there had been an affection growing inside her. My instincts sensed danger. Something had to be done, quickly. My instincts did not disappoint me. But she was still of some use. I had to save her life.
We need to cover our tracks. No one can know Umbrella was involved. The corporation has used the outbreak in Raccoon City as an opportunity to deploy a prototype of our most powerful and responsive BOW to date, the TO2, codenamed Nemesis.
We're here to collect the G-Virus sample. They are unaware of this operation and are considered expendable.
Roger. We'll rendezvous at the meeting point.
But Hunk, the only survivor of Umbrella's salvage team, was there before us. Although Birkin lost the battle to Leon and Claire, we succeeded in gathering samples of the G-Virus from his dead body.
After that, Claire set out alone to find her brother. And Sherry and I were rescued by U.S. government agents.
We have the authority to do as we please with you. You and that girl. An innocent who carries the G antibody. Don't worry. We're taking very good care of her. Bottom line is, you have the experience we're looking for. So if you want this to end peacefully, you really have only one choice. Work for us.
Listen, he's coming for us. We're both gonna die.
What are you saying?
You'll see.
over.
October 1st, night. I woke up to the sound of falling rain. I can't believe I'm still alive.
It is important to remain calm and collected, even in the most extreme situations. In Umbrella's underground laboratory, I forgot that wisdom. Something about the meeting with Leon changed me. First things first, though. I must escape this town and survive in order to accomplish my objective. I can save the truth for after I make it out alive.
Listen. At dawn, this town is gonna be destroyed by a missile.
They're gonna wipe out the town?
We don't have much time. Let's move.
He lost his will and chose death. He was weak.
Wesker.
And you, Ada, you have also failed. Your actions in betraying us and helping that Leon fellow will have consequences for our organization.
See this? It's a tissue fragment with Birkin's G-virus.
Ada, there are two things you must be made aware of. One, in just moments, Raccoon City will be completely eradicated by a government-launched missile. And two, an Umbrella officer will be leaving town in a helicopter. If you are not honored, there will be no way to leave Raccoon City. It is in our best interest that you survive. The G-virus sample is required.
You okay?
I'm fine.
We've got to get out of here. A rescue chopper's on its way. Come with me. I really didn't know Umbrella was behind this.
We have to let the world know what happened.
Yeah, but first, we have to make it out of here alive.
The people who go down in history as its heroes are never stable. Inside UMF-013 is all of the research data. With that, Umbrella will rise from the ashes.
I guess we're all set.
All right then, we're out of here.
Oh no.
It's here.
In the morning, the government bombed Raccoon City in an attempt to stop further viral outbreak. This was, of course, their feigned reason.
Thus, Raccoon City vanished from the map. However, not everything disappeared with the town's annihilation. The nightmare would continue over the next few years as the survivors fought on.
I survived the fate of Raccoon City thanks to Wesker's warning. Of course, I knew the only reason my life was spared was because I had the G-virus tissue fragment. But I would settle things in time. We were both used to being backstabbed and manipulated. I had a feeling our partnership would last a little while longer.
Can you see that area behind me beneath the red tinted sky? That is what's left of Raccoon City after the military fired a missile at it.
Reports of disaster at Raccoon City. These shocking images just in.
A mysterious plague or viral outbreak seems to have run rampant,
implicating the Umbrella Corporation in the death of innocent citizens.
Real tragedy which overwhelmed Raccoon City earlier this week.
It's the worst atomic energy disaster since the Russian Chernobyl incident in 1986.
The state governor has personally extended his thanks to the Umbrella Corporation for their swift actions.
Confirmed reports the missile was allegedly nuclear. If this is indeed the case, then there's little hope of finding any survivors among the city's 100,000 inhabitants.
Mr. President, what is the connection between Umbrella Corporation and this biohazard
No more questions at this time. Thank you very much.
The President has announced his resignation.
And now we have a rather unfortunate turn of events. It seems that the President and the Federal Council have passed judgment over the civilians of Raccoon City. The President and Federal Council have ruled that the Backless Terminate operation is the best course of action for this extreme situation, and have since, based on that fact, Raccoon City has been literally wiped off the map. Current reports have the death toll surpassing the 100,000 mark. Our hearts go out to those poor civilians of Raccoon City.
Before long, as they always do, people stopped talking about the catastrophe that struck down the once peaceful town of Raccoon City. Time, as they say, heals all. Yet, even so, we must never forget about the horrific events leading up to the catastrophe, or history will surely repeat itself. However, the harsh reality may be that mankind lacks the power to close the book on this disaster once and for all.
An interesting incident. Bizarre murder cases have recently occurred in a remote village in the Caucasus region of Russia. The villagers there are making noise that a legendary monster, Olmus, has been revived. The disastrous scene easily reminds me of the first bizarre incidents in Raccoon Forest. There's an old chemical plant 3 kilometers from the village that was built during the Soviet Union era. And according to the investigation, the property rights have now transferred to a prestigious European noble family. It seems foreign capital was invested 5 years ago, and a large-scale underground development was conducted. According to geological surveys, there's a solid bedrock that is perfect to construct a certain kind of facility on. It seems the crossword's somehow been solved. Umbrella has boldly survived for the 5 years since Raccoon's annihilation. Held responsible for the virus leak, and in spite of a plunge in their stock prices, they campaigned at the trial that it was all a U.S. government conspiracy, and succeeded in buying time until the final death sentence. It was fortunate for Umbrella that they had colluded with the government from the very beginning. Naturally, the nation has secrets just like anyone else if you clear the dust, and their survival tactics were to stir up public doubt by selling them in pieces to the court and the media. That which is called madness exists in varying degrees and lurks even in people, organizations, and nations. However, Umbrella was the most mad in that incident. The foolish Umbrella is showing signs of a revival. BOWs are beginning to go rampant in conflict regions. The BOWs are being supplied as weapons. Umbrella has organized itself under the surface and established a system to produce bioorganic weapons, and information has come in that they operate ships for transportation. It's time. They fidget with a T-virus create mutant organisms and sell them. Even if a certain amount of result were to appear, their imagination, which merely trifles with the virus as a medium for bioorganic weapons manufacture, will give themselves away again someday. The Philosopher's Stone belongs in the hands of a truly worthy alchemist. Those inept should withdraw in silence. Without a doubt, here will become the place of Umbrella's demise.
Umbrella's stock plummeted with government inquiries into their involvement in the Raccoon City incident. Before long, they were able to redirect responsibility for the incident. Part of the blame was cleverly shifted to the American government. Umbrella had strong ties and deep pockets, thus they were able to drag out the legal proceedings. Over time, it appeared that all evidence of Umbrella's involvement had vanished with the missile touchdown. How convenient for them. Though fortune has a way of turning when you least expect it. It was the year 2003. Umbrella had a base of operations in Russia, where they were working on a new BOW. They were preparing to arm the unstable regions of the world with their bioweaponry. Chris and Joe had joined a regional biohazard containment unit and had heard rumors about this nightmarish facility. They recklessly plunged in to shut it down. They have no idea of the awesome and terrible power that awaits them with the new BOW, Talos. The only thing that can defeat power is more power. That is the one constant in this universe. However, there is no point in power if it consumes itself. I will enlist the help of an old friend against our common foe. I will use one pawn to eliminate the other and emerge with the spoils for myself.
There's no time to wait for authorization from the Russian government. That facility is an Umbrella base.
Yeah. We can't let them get away with this.
Chris, it appears our fates are forever intertwined.
It's like a little black cockroach.
Biohazard level 4. Contamination detected.
It is such a waste to destroy this place. But we don't have a choice. With you and Talos, we can always start over. Proceed with the Talos activation. We need him operational before the Russian government arrives.
Acknowledged. Resetting activation program schedule. 2 airborne objects are approaching at high speeds toward the facility from the northeast.
A shortcut.
Comrade Wesker, welcome to my humble abode.
I see you are still resolved to go down with the ship, Colonel.
Umbrella's not going anywhere. All of the pain, the punishment, and the difficulties helped to make Umbrella stronger. It's a shame you couldn't understand.
Stand aside.
Codename Talos. A pinnacle of biological weaponry, all controlled by the Red Queen computer. The ultimate weapon.
So this is it.
Yes. She was activated that night at the mansion. I extracted her before Raccoon City became nothing more than a memory. Her and I have a lot in common. She linked with Talos, desiring more information and more data. She wanted to know the truth, no matter how painful that reality may be.
That thing is merely a tool. What it wants is something the user determines for it.
It's good that we can be honest with each other. That's the sign of a healthy relationship. It's a shame that this friendship has to end. We are not done yet!
Requested data transfer complete.
The summation of Umbrella on one disk. This should come in handy. It looks like you have finished what you came to do as well, Chris. Just as I predicted. Goodbye, fair lady.
Data format initialized. 80 seconds until completion. All data erased.
Soon, Umbrella will be gone forever. They held the power of the T-virus in their hands, but they lacked the proper vision. The true vision of the future. And now, it falls to me to usher in this new future.
According to the latest reports, Umbrella has been found guilty on all charges of crimes related to the Raccoon City incident 5 years ago. The prosecution has remained quiet on how they acquired proof of Umbrella's involvement, and the defense plans to appeal the decision on the grounds that the evidence is not admissible in court. The Russian Ministry of the Interior has agreed to cooperate with the FBI in finding the whereabouts of Oswald E. Spencer. Mr. Spencer has been determined to have played a large part in the biohazard that contaminated Raccoon City. An anonymous witness close to the suspect was invaluable in providing evidence about Mr. Spencer's involvement.
My dear Spencer, how the mighty have fallen. Your umbrella has folded, and now you are a fugitive in the same world you once sought to control. We shall meet again before the conclusion of this drama. Then, you will learn of the history I will write for this world.
Albert Wesker. I wonder where he's headed next. Something tells me this whole affair has just been a taste of what he's got in store. To him, Umbrella represented power. He used it to hide behind while he made plans of his own. And now the Umbrella's been folded. With the sanctuary of their old Umbrella ruined, those in power struggle to erect a new one. They are aware of their own crookedness and deceit as they engage in their personal war of light and darkness. That's why Wesker will stop at nothing in opening his new Umbrella. The giant pharmaceutical corporation S maintains medical and drug facilities the world over. We know for certain that Wesker has been in contact with them following Umbrella's demise. There's no doubt we'll next hear from him there. The organization must remain vigilant. But Wesker's not stupid. He knows exactly what the organization is thinking. He and I still have time to continue our little game of cat and mouse before the next move is played. This mission may be over, but the battle is just beginning.